Bernie released a detailed anti-corruption plan, and I want to go through it with you. So here's some of the stuff that Sanders' plan would do. Ban all corporate donations for presidential inauguration events and cap all individual donations at $500. So right off the bat, that's something that nobody else is proposing. All corporate donations from presidential inauguration events banned. That's next level stuff. Like Donald Trump was pretending he was anti-corporate in his campaign when he ran in 2016 and when he won. But then immediately, when it was, his inauguration, they started taking massive amounts of corporate money. At the convention, of course, they took massive amounts of corporate money. I mean, he was doing it for his campaign too, but he's pretending he wasn't. He was, I'm self-funding my campaign or something, whatever. But he's not. He wasn't doing it. So Bernie's not playing around. He's saying, no, this doesn't just apply to me. This applies to the party. This applies to the inauguration. Let's continue. Ban corporate contributions to the Democratic Party convention and all related committees. See? Return to mandatory public funding for national party conventions by strengthening the Federal Election Campaign Act. Ban DNC donations from federal lobbyists and corporations and set up a lifetime lobbying ban for national party chairs and co-chairs. Lobbying ban, I love that one. Ban advertising during presidential primary debates. Okay, see, that's, again, brilliant. So he sees a lot of the European models on this, and he goes, oh, that makes a lot more sense. He would cut out the commercials from presidential primary debates, and I think he also said on Joe Rogan's show he would change the format where it's a more serious format, where it's not just sound bites back and forth. You'd give the parties or the candidates their own 30 minutes or an hour, and they would walk through all of their proposals, which, again, I think is a wonderful idea, and it's a way of treating this election, or all elections, as seriously as they should be treated. He would also, now the next thing Bernie would do is he would replace the Federal Elections Commission with something called the Federal Elections Administration. And the reason for that is the Federal Elections Commission is deadlocked on purpose. And so they never get anything done, and they allow all types of corruption because you have equal number Democrats and Republicans, and no matter what happens for both sides, they go, no, nothing to see here. I don't see anything wrong with the way that this person's raising money, even if it's brazenly corrupt. So he says, get rid of the Federal Elections Commission, make the Federal Elections Administration, and have them actually do their job and not be partisan deadlocked, and have experts who know campaign finance law and actually enforces it. They say that FEA, by the way, all this is listed in Vox here. The FEA would have 3 members, a chair, and 2 administrators. All members would be required to have a background in some form of law or ethics enforcement. Hearing for violations of campaign finance laws would go before an administrative law judge. In addition to imposing civil penalties for violations, the administration could also impose criminal penalties. So, in other words, crack down on corruption harder, criminally. I love that. As president, Sanders would attempt to overturn the 1976 Supreme Court ruling Buckley versus Valeo, which ruled money is effectively speech. Many campaign finance experts believe this ruling favors the wealthy who can afford to lobby the government over everyday citizens. Attempt to pass a constitutional amendment to overturn the 2010 Supreme Court ruling Citizens United versus FEC. Both this and the attempt to overturn Buckley versus Valeo would almost certainly face a court challenge. Sanders would work with Congress to pass legislation to end super PACs, political spending by 501c4s, and other groups able to accept unlimited contributions or who do not disclose their donors. He'd also work with Congress to pass mandatory public financing laws for all federal elections. So that's something we call clean elections. He wants that for all federal elections, including a new system of universal small dollar vouchers that would allow voting age Americans to donate to the candidates of their choice. So that is, Ro Khanna's had a similar idea to this. Andrew Yang's had a similar idea to this. Even Kirsten Gillibrand. The idea is you give all Americans a certain amount of money and they get to give it to whoever their favorite candidates are, and that's replacing a system of billionaires and private donors and corporations donating massive amounts of money to politicians. So again, this is part of what's called a clean elections package. Now, he would also institute a lifetime lobbying ban for former members of Congress and senior staffers. So basically, he took all of the ideas that are out there to end corruption, and he's like, how about we do all of them? Let's do all of them. That's what this is. That's exactly what he's doing. Clean elections, ban on lobbying, so no revolving door, going a step further and even saying, sorry, but the inauguration and the conventions, they're going to take no corporate money. They're going to be financed by the people. Guys, this is really a top-down effort from Bernie to remake the Democratic Party and make it not just, I'm going to make up a word here, uncorporate. The goal is to make it anti-corporate so that we take on those powerful interests. That's the whole idea. He wants there to be no ambiguity, no systemic issues which raise the question as to whether or not politicians are corrupt. He's saying, no, we're going all the way. And also, by the way, massive credit because as far as I could tell, Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who's brought up Buckley versus Valeo, which is actually the beginning of the cases that led to the inevitable conclusion of money equals free speech. And usually what happens, and this is the bait and switch that a lot of politicians do, is they act like it was only Citizens United that made it so that money equals speech, and that's not true. So you'll have a lot of corporate Democrats say stuff like, oh, we need to go back before Citizens United. We need to reverse Citizens United. But in reality, that's a trick because money still equaled speech before Citizens United. Citizens United and McCutcheon kind of shot a dead horse and made it so that, oh, we already allowed you to be corrupt. Now we're going to put that on steroids. So Bernie's going all the way back to the original sin, Buckley versus Valeo, and he's saying, we're going to go to the root problem here. We're going to try to fix that. And by the way, there's a good argument to be made that the only way to do it is through a constitutional amendment because the Supreme Court already ruled that they think money equals free speech in a variety of cases. So now they cite precedent and they say, see, money does equal free speech. Now, we could argue that's a misinterpretation of the Constitution, and that I agree with that. I think that's true. That is a misinterpretation of the Constitution. But unless you fundamentally change the makeup of the court and also have a court that's willing to overturn precedent, well, then you're not going to get it done. So, and you can't just go through Congress and pass a law because a law alone is not enough because the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. So the Constitution always overrides any sort of federal law. So that's why, because a lot of people, well, why not just go through Congress and do it through Congress? It's not enough. It's not enough. The Supreme Court could just look at it and slap it down and go, nope, sorry. We don't agree with that because the federal law, in the same way federal law overrides state law, the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, overrides federal law. So you could have it immediately slapped down even if you pass a good law through Congress. So that's why Bernie is actually saying constitutional amendment as well. I mean, this is as strong an anti-corporate plan as I've ever seen in my life. This would totally change American politics. And by the way, just so you know, because I don't know how many people understand this about the way politics functions, but every single problem that you see in our system today, the root of it is money in politics. Because if we had a system that wasn't corrupt, a lot of these problems would at the very least have a very good chance of being fixed, but very likely just flat out be fixed. So I'll give you an example. This is a great one because it's so clear. Gun reform. Did you know that over 90% of Americans want to do a universal background check bill? Over 90%. You even have other forms of gun control, like a ban on assault weapons, and a ban on high-capacity magazines. All of those poll over 50%, and in most cases, well over 50%. So we have this problem. We have 32,000 gun deaths every single year in this country. We have over 10,000 gun homicides every year in this country. Everybody agrees it's a problem. Everybody sees the mass shootings. And we actually have consensus in the country as to what to do about it. Did you know that even when you poll Republicans, they're in favor of a universal background check bill? Get this. Even when you poll the NRA, they say, yeah, we're in favor of a universal background check bill. So what gives? What's stopping it? Well, the answer is very simple. The gun manufacturers, so the people who make money off of selling guns, they give money to the leadership of the NRA, and then the leadership of the NRA buys the entire Republican Party through campaign contributions, and there are strings attached, and the strings are, you don't support any kind of gun control legislation, even if it's the most common sense gun reform that's widely popular. And they listen to them. They listen to them. Isn't it wild that even the membership of the NRA even disagrees with the leadership of the NRA? And again, the polls prove this. So how can we have an issue in what's supposed to be a constitutional republic and a representative democracy? We have an issue that's over 90% popular and nothing gets done? It's all because of corruption. Another example is raising the minimum wage. 80% of the American people want to raise the minimum wage. 80%. 80%. That's overwhelming. But who has all the power? Corporations. Corporations give money to the politicians to run their campaigns. So then the politicians know there's strings attached, and one of the things the corporations do not want to change is the minimum wage law. So even though 80% of the country is on the side of treat workers better, pay them more, raise the minimum wage, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because the corporations run the system. We have a corporatocracy in this country. I mean, that's what it is. So the only way to really fix these problems, climate change is another great example. The whole reason we're not doing anything on climate change is the oil lobby. They have a lot of wealth, a lot of power. They still have bought the entire Republican Party. They could block any and all progress. Even some corporate Democrats too. So this is why we get nothing done. When you look at war, I mean, we've covered the polls before. It's something like 17% of Americans that still want to be in Afghanistan. The disapproval rating of like the war in Iraq is sky high. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody in the country wants to be there. Such a tiny percentage, but we're still there. Why? Little thing called the military-industrial complex. Raytheon and Boeing, all these corporations, they pay the politicians their campaign contributions, and the politicians do their bidding. That's the way it works, guys. This isn't a conspiracy. To the extent it is a conspiracy, it's an open conspiracy. It's in your face. They look at the dynamics. This is what it is. This is how it works. So the only way to really fix this is to go to the root. And Bernie Sanders is proposing to seriously go to the root. He's not doing just tweaks around the edges. He's not just talking about Citizens United. He's not just talking about a democracy dollars, clean elections approach. All those things are good, but really the heart of it is you have to do a constitutional amendment. You have to do it. So having somebody in government who will spearhead that effort, who will point out the problem and explain it to people like I just did to you right now, that's giant. Because everybody understands on some visceral level, they're like, yeah, things are messed up and the government's not representing us, and why is everybody pissed? And why does Congress have an approval rating of like 19%? Like, what's going on here? Why is everything so broken? You can just vote for Congress. Like, you just voted for them. You just did. And then you poll people like a month later and they're like, I hate them. They have under 20% approval rating. How does that happen? It happens in a broken system. It happens in a totally broken system. So we got to fix it. We absolutely have to fix it, and this is definitely the way to fix it. His plan is comprehensive and far-reaching. He does things that never even occurred to me, and I live this stuff. I wrote my freaking college thesis on clean elections. But when he said, also we're going to take the inauguration and the convention and no corporate money there, too. It's like he's trying to cut off every single avenue of potential corruption. There's nothing else to say except he's the real deal Holyfield. He's got the best plan, and we know what to do next. We got to get this dude elected.